Good morning. It is Thursday. Welcome on into Let's Bet It. Lauren Jabbar here. Jared Smith. Jared, how are we? We're kicking off week 14 today.
Gather around the campfire, kids. Let me tell you a story about Baker Mayfield going to Hollywood. That's how I feel today.
Oh my God. I mean, what are your expectations for a guy like that flying all the way out there to Hollywood?
It's funny. So we did playbook yesterday, and we recorded a separate segment for Thursday Night Football, and
Yeah.
I was angry. I was projecting some frustrations on the Rams for signing Baker because I thought it was a very interesting spot for the Rams. Short week. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
listen, this is a Raiders team that just lost to Jeff Saturday and Parks and Rec Frazier a couple weeks ago. So I wouldn't put it past them to lose to a quarterback that literally, got off the plane 48 hours prior and had the playbook shipped to him so he could study it while on the plane. Like that sounds actually normal compared to losing to Saturday and Frazier a few weeks ago, right? At home, no less. This is a short week on the road against a good defense, frankly, right? Like I know the Rams
Mm-hmm.
have had their issues offensively this year, but they're still, they still got some really good players on the defensive side of the ball. So I've kind of warmed up to this Baker narrative. I listened to a Rich Eisen
You have?
snippet, and I have, and I will explain it throughout the show, and we'll get to it later in the show too. But I listened to Rich Eisen last night, and he's one of my favorite, radio personalities right now. He did a long diatribe on why this was really good for Baker and the Rams long term, and I kind of drank the Kool-Aid a little bit last night, and then I slept on it and woke up this morning, and I feel like it could be think of all the crazy shit that's happened in the NFL this year. Would Baker
Yeah.
Mayfield and Sean McVay connecting and having like one good performance, would that really surprise you compared to what's happened in the league this year? Like he's got all the talent in the world. It's
Yeah,
just
no.
it's this that he's really struggled with, and maybe Sean McVay is the right elixir for him because let's be honest, Matthew Stafford's spinal contusion sounds pretty bad. So the Rams might be in the market for a long-term starting quarterback here, and maybe it's Baker. Who knows?
Yes, I mean, spinal contusion doesn't sound great, to be honest with you,
Mm.
but I just don't know if Baker's the answer. I guess we'll see. Is he 100% starting? They said they're
I'm
working on his
hearing
status.
that. So that I think is the most intriguing part of tonight. And I think that makes the bet very difficult. But as we were getting ready to go on the air this morning, we saw Westgate, Superbook, and a couple of the other sharper shops here in town push this line to 7. And in my opinion,
Yeah.
once it moves to that point, it's like default mechanical, like at this point, like you just have to
Yeah.
put a unit on it because at 7, it's moved so much since the open, and it's a home underdog on Thursday. Like it's almost like without even thinking about it, I just logged in and put a unit on it, and probably going to be the only bet that I make today in football because the rest of this handicap is very difficult, especially on the Ram side.
Yeah. It's craziness at this point. We're going to get into that. We have
Yeah.
Bobby Stanley coming on, giving us some of his props for Thursday Night Football to kick off week 14. Before that, we have Would You Rather, and then we also have some college hoop talk today. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's bet it, presented by our friends at Superbook Sports. Let's start with Would You Rather. Dolphins at this point to win the AFC East at plus 350. Right now, they're sitting at 8-4, one game behind the Buffalo Bills, or the Cowboys to win the NFC East at plus 350. And right now, they're 2 games behind the Philadelphia Eagles, who are 11-1, the Cowboys 9-3 so far this season. Which one would you feel more confident with at this point?
Neither, frankly.
Mm.
Um, I mean, listen, I think the Cowboys are a really good football team, but they're chasing a team that might be better. I think the Dolphins, this is a big week for the Dolphins, right? Like
Yeah, it
they
is.
get kind of brought back down to earth against San Francisco, and they played most of that game against the backup quarterback, and they still really couldn't
Mm-hmm.
solve Purdy, right? Like, he marched down the field a couple times, and I know one of the touchdowns that crushed my over in the final minute was a defensive score. Thank you very much, Nick
Yes.
Bosa, for being a beast. But for the most part, the Dolphins, they were pretty much held in check offensively in that game. And, they gave up 26 points to Brock Purdy. So that's not great, right? Like we need to
Mhm.
see a better offensive performance this week. And the line has moved significantly in their favor. I'm seeing now 3.5 painted across the board for that game against the Chargers. And from what I heard, the Dolphins stayed out west this week, did a little team bonding, didn't go back to Miami. So I think this is a big week for them. I mean, the line moved through 3 to 3.5. So clearly there is significant money coming in on the Dolphins. And then you look at the rest of that division. Well, Jets got brought back down to earth a little bit. The Bills just took a shot to the gut. They lost Von Miller for the season. We'll see what that does to their overall
Yeah, that
psyche.
stinks.
I think Dolphins probably would be the way to go here, but neither one of them really interests me.
Let's move on to individual players. Oh boy, offensive player of the year. We got two of them for you. Tyreek Hill, right now, plus 180, or Justin Jefferson at plus 350. Let me give you the numbers. Tyreek Hill, 96 receptions, 1,379 yards, 5 touchdowns, 14.4 average on catch, which is 18th in the NFL. For Justin Jefferson, 88 receptions, 1,277 yards, 6 touchdowns, and also 14 and a half reception, or 14 and a half yards per reception, which is 17th, right ahead of Tyreek Hill. Who would you choose as the offensive player of the year at this point? You get a little bit more value with Justin Jefferson, 3.5 to 1. Tyreek Hill's plus 180.
Is Hill the favorite? Is that the favorite number, plus 180? And then Jefferson's second on the odds board?
I'm pretty sure. Let me look. Who would you choose?
This is another tough one.
I
think Jefferson's got the wow factor. Thank you, Kyle. Yes, Tyreek Hill
is the favorite.
I think Jefferson's got the wow factor, right? But I mean, is Tyreek Hill gonna get votes taken away because of Tua and Waddle, right? Like with Jefferson, it's just him, and it's Cousins, right? Like who would you rather have right now, Cousins or Tua? Like is the quarterback part of this handicap at all? I don't know. Maybe not. I would take Jefferson just for the shock value, and you're getting a little bit more on the odds. And like I feel like they're both kind of Jefferson's third behind Hurts. Yeah, I'll be honest. I'd rather have Hurts personally
than either of the two. Neither. I'll take Hurts, please. Thank you very
I'll take
much.
Hurts. Right? Like I think the Eagles need to get some recognition for something. I mean, the Eagles are going to win 14 games this year. Like, how does an Eagle not win a postseason award in some capacity, whether it's Sirianni Coach of the Year, whether it's, Jalen Hurts to win Poi. I don't think you can give him the MVP. I think that's still Mahomes' award to win or lose. But, yeah, I think Jalen Hurts is worthy of some recognition for sure.
Jalen Hurts, he needs it. I mean, they're 11-1 in the season so far. They've been playing really well. It's going to be interesting to see how they do this week. What about teams to make the playoffs? This one, if the Chargers keep charging, I don't think there's any chance at this point. But the Chargers are plus 140 to win or to make it to the playoffs, and the Giants are minus 120. Would you feel comfortable laying the 20 cents at the Giants, or maybe taking a little bit of a risk on the Chargers?
I cannot bet anything Charger related to make the playoffs. That is a black hole of money.
That's a true statement.
That is a black hole of money. They couldn't make the playoffs last year, and all they needed to do was, like the tie, right? Like the tie between the Chargers and the Raiders would have, like,
literally that's all they needed to do.
Yeah, that was a weird scenario last year. But do you really want to lay money on the Giants over a 5-week stretch? Like that doesn't sound very appetizing either. Who came up with these? Kyle, I need a reboot on some of these would you rathers. None of these are appetizing
Next week,
at all. And I'm hungry this morning. I mean,
Next
I'm betting
week,
on the Rams for Christ's sake, and I can't even get to the window on any of these. Yeah, Jacob. Oh, Kyle just threw Jacob straight under the bus. Wow. I hope you're watching, Jacob.
It's okay.
Kyle just threw you under the bus.
We love you, Jacob, still. Speaking of the Rams, let's bring in our number one Rams fan and number one prop handicapper, Bobby Stanley, prop Holliday, to chat Thursday night football prop bets. Bobby, you ready for the Baker Mayfield era in LA?
I am. I got to be honest, guys. I've been waiting for this show all week. When I saw
I
Baker was
bet.
on the rundown, I got even more excited. So I'm ready. Hit me with it. Let's talk some Rams for a change.
Okay, well, we got the Raiders taking on the Rams tonight. First of all, what are your thoughts on Baker Mayfield? That line was 5.5 a little bit earlier in the week. I got the Raiders laying the points, moved up to 7 this morning. Now I see it back at 6.5. I mean, this line is so volatile right now. Like, how do you go about handicapping a game like this?
So I saw Tom Pelissero of NFL Network tweeted out a few hours ago that Baker Mayfield is expected to dress, and his role will depend on John Walford. He's questionable right now with his neck. My gut feeling is that Baker will either play blowout minutes or they'll interchangeably just throw him in, see how he picks up the offense. Supposedly he does know the game plan, which is, I guess, okay, you can know the game plan, but do you know the offense? I am going to move forward as if John Walford is the quarterback. We saw how they played last week. They were able to put up 23 points on Seattle. Yes, it was at home, but it's really never at home in LA. I do think they can make the game somewhat competitive and get the ball up and down the field against Las Vegas's defense. Probably one of the worst secondaries in the league, which is one of my angles for tonight. But Baker didn't really come into my consideration when I was handicapping player props. I don't think we see him too much, and if we do, the game should be completely out of reach, and then you're in checkdown city. So Baker didn't factor too much in, but it will be exciting to see him in horns later. I'll say that.
In horns set. Every time I think of horns, I think of so when I used to work for Florida Atlantic University, I traveled with the women's basketball team, and our coach had this play that she always ran, horn set. It's basically like a high screen. It's like, just like ingrained into my brain. She would scream it every 30 seconds to practice. Horns! Sorry. Okay. So I think,
but he digresses.
We're having a morning here.
It's a morning.
It's really early out here in Vegas.
Coffee.
And I'm really
Jared's is like 7 a.m. his time. There's a lot going on this morning.
I've been up since 4 a.m., guys. I've already been spit up on. Yeah. It's a day. I'm with you.
You've had a longer day than we have.
You've been thrown up on, so you've already watched the first half of this game tonight, basically, is what you're saying. If that's the case.
Well done, sir.
All right. I'm gonna put on my wizard hat for a minute. So here's how I think this is gonna play out.
Sure.
I think the Rams here. So based on the line movement this morning, this line just suddenly magically jumped to 7 overnight. And really hard to explain because we don't have a lot of set information on who's playing quarterback for the Rams. And to me, that's the only reason why a line would jump like that at this stage of the market process, right? Like morning of, like all of a sudden we wake up and the line's moved a point. I think John Walford won't play tonight, and I think Baker Mayfield's going to start the game. And I hope it does happen, because if it does happen, then we're going to really this is going to be arguably the most entertaining Thursday night game of the year. I don't care if it's 0-0 in the third quarter. It will be the most entertaining Thursday night game of the year, just based off of that market value alone. So with Baker starting, that doesn't change your thinking process at all with this. Would you rely more on the known quantities that the Rams have? Clev TA wrote up Van Jefferson for the site this morning. Does that guy resonate a little bit more because he's really the only veteran receiver that the Rams have on their roster? Or would you just go completely off the rails and maybe go with a crazy touchdown prop of some kind? I don't to me, this is a very difficult handicap from a props perspective with a guy that has no tendencies at all and no real connection with, the skill position guys on his offense.
Yeah. No, it is tough, especially with the Baker factor. How much of the offense can he know? If you put in a vanilla set, what are you looking at? You're looking at heavy Cam Akers. You're looking checkdowns to Kyron Williams. Historically, Baker favors his tight ends. Is he going to be? He's not going to know enough of the progressions to get to a second and third read. So your first read is maybe a Van Jefferson. But I like Van Jefferson tonight. If Walford starts, I do think that's a really good play for Jefferson over 37.5. With Baker, it makes it a little bit scary because his average depth of target, I think or his air share yards last week was highest on the team. So he is moving the ball downfield. I don't know if Baker's going to be able to see that. So when it comes to handicapping, one of the plays I love tonight, whether it's Walford or Baker, is Kyron Williams, the rookie running back out of Notre Dame. His line opened up at 11.5 receiving yards. That's check down city, especially if you're in a play action mode, just to give him some breath offensively. As far as Kyron Williams, he hits it in 2 of 4 games. He has a higher snap percentage in blowouts. So over the last 4, when the games are close, he was under 30% of the snaps. When he's playing Kansas City, and I think it was against New Orleans, his snaps were like 55 to 75%. So if the game is in that +7 range, maybe Kyron Williams gets a bulk share of the snaps. And then just look at the Raiders matchup. They allow 55 receiving yards per game to opposing running backs, 66 over the last 3. They're dead last in DVOA against running back in the receiving game. So I like Kyron Williams regardless who's at running back. It fits Baker. It fits a blowout. And the line's 11.5. It was 14.5 last week. So we're getting some decent value on that.
What about Mac Hollins? 44.5 receiving yards. We like in the over or the under for that one?
Let's talk about an offense that's whole and playing really well for a change. Mac Hollins over 45.5 receiving yards. I do like the over. For me, it's very matchup oriented. I think Jalen Ramsey, he didn't really tail DK Metcalf last week, but that's because Tyler Lockett's on the other side. You really can't just move him because they have an equally good wide receiver on the other side of the field. With Devontae Adams, I expect him to tail him much more. And if you look at Devontae Adams over-under yards, it reflects that. Last week it was 98.5. This week it's 88.5. So if Mac Hollins gets the rookie Darion Kendrick, the kid out of Georgia, he's in for a big night. I mean, Kendrick is 9th worst yards per catch at 14.4, 228 yards after catch, 12th worst in the league. And Hollins has played well of late. He's had 29 targets, 20% target share over the last 4. And this Raiders offense has been getting really good pass protection. I commented on it last week. And Derek Carr's looking good over the last 4 games. So I like Mac Hollins' matchup. And I like their offense tonight. The Rams are down a lot of players on defense, Aaron Donald being one of them.
Who else are they down on defense?
They're down David Long, starting corner, Terrell Lewis, starting outside linebacker, and Travin Howard, second inside linebacker. So they have 4 guys who play significant snaps on this defense missing time. Could be a big Josh Jacobs night, the interior of that line. I never really want to test Bobby Wagner, I'm sorry. I never want to test him. But I do think we could see a lot of carries from Josh Jacobs. I think the over-run is like 20.5.
Woo!
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting spot.
Baker Mayfield era heating up in LA.
I do want to say one comment about Baker in general. It's not specific to this game. If we look at what the Rams did, there's 2 scenarios how this plays out over a long period of time. If he plays well over the next 4 or 5 games, they've just solidified a backup quarterback for the future of Matt Stafford. Rumor has they were in on Jimmy G.
Are we sure Matt's going to be back? Can I be honest? I think Matthew Stafford might have played his last game. I really do.
It's totally possible. And if case you just got your stopgap on a $1 million, waiver wire pickup.
Yeah.
Supposedly Sean McVay loved Baker in the pre-draft process. So if he is a stopgap, Rams finally have a 2024 first round pick.
He was the number 1 overall pick. I would hope a lot of coaches liked him, right?
At the time. So no, completely fair. Best case scenario, they get a backup quarterback for the future. Absolute worst case scenario, they lose him in the offseason and they get a compensatory pick. They essentially bought a compensatory pick for $1 million waiver wire. So at this point in this
and they've been trading away draft picks like Pez dispensers give out candy the last few years. So getting a draft pick's not the worst thing in the world.
It's kind of the game that they've been playing, and I know that's how it likes to be. They trade around, but okay, look at it. You trade a second for Sammy Watkins. You let him walk, and he got picked up by Kansas City. Got paid massive amounts of dollars. They get a 3rd round pick back. You trade a first for Brandon Cooks. You trade him away for a 2nd round pick to Houston. Maybe that's just taking advantage of Houston like everyone else. They do trade away picks, but there is some logic behind it. They do play the compensatory pick game, which helps them in the middle of the rounds. So
haven't they not had like a 1st round pick in like 4 years though?
It might be 5, if we're being honest. Jalen Ramsey, Brandon Cooks.
That's not a great strategy for building a football team, though, Bobby. I would want those 1st round picks. Those are important to me.
Jared, there's at least 20
teams. I've never built
at least 20 teams in the NFL who, if you said trade your 2 first picks in the next 2 years, for a Super Bowl, would they do it? And in a heartbeat, they would slam on the
I'm
table.
not saying it wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it wasn't worth it, but now
Absolutely.
we're past the point where it's like,
Now you're
yeah,
paying.
we got the
The
Super
check is
Bowl.
done.
Now we're on the backside of it where we have to rebuild. Because it does seem like the Rams are kind of in rebuilding mode, right?
They have their core for another year and a half. And when Donald, Cup, and Stafford are done, that's when McVay is done.
Yeah.
I'm hoping they get the gang back together one more year. And then we'll probably see McVay in a Thursday night football or Monday night football booth. That's my guess. And Stafford, like you said, concussions. As a fan, I'm equally as concerned. He may have not played. He may never play another
spinal
game
contusion
again.
Sounds very different than what we originally heard, which was concussion.
Yeah. And supposedly he's not willing to get the surgery. If you don't get the surgery, it's really not shaping up well. So I do think this.
Go read the Andrew Luck article on ESPN. Very similar. It feels like a very similar situation is brewing with Mr. Stafford. Although the difference is Matthew Stafford has a Super Bowl Lombardi trophy on his mantle and Andrew Luck does not. So to me, that's even more reason for Matthew to hang.
We will see. It's crazy. We will see what happens moving forward. Raiders taking on the Rams tonight. Baker Mayfield era. We'll see if he plays. We'll see if he doesn't. Bobby Stanley, we so appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. Best of luck with your bets. We'll see you Sunday.
Take care, guys. Thank you. Good luck.
Good job, Bobo.
All right, getting into some college hoops. Let's first talk Rutgers taking on my nemesis in Ohio State. Ohio State's won 3 of its last 4 games. Rutgers also won 3 of its last 4 games and knocked off Indiana last Saturday. And the Rutgers have one of the top defenses in the entire country, Jared. They have first in opponent. Wow, I have something in my eye. First in opponent 3-point. Wow. I'm struggling right now talking. Is today a morning or what?
It is.
It's a morning. Rutgers have one of the top defenses in the entire country. They are first in opponent 3-point field goal percentage allowed at 20.5%, 5th in scoring defense, 7th in field goal defense. Do you think this is a spot where maybe Ohio State can keep up with them? Because their offense is pretty good. They're averaging 80.5 points per game. Or is Rutgers defense going to reign supreme here in this spot?
It's a good game. Good Big Ten game.
I'm excited for it.
I've seen the line move in favor of Ohio State. They're favored by 6.5 now. So clearly the market does favor the Buckeyes at home. I think the issue with Rutgers is not their defense. It's can they score enough, right? Like they're outside the top 100 in adjusted offense. They're not a naturally gifted offensive team. They're 291 out of, I forget how many teams are in college basketball now, 350 something. I don't know. They might have added
there's a lot
since I last. Yeah, there's a lot, but the Rutgers is 291 in effective field goal percentage. Remember that if you recall last year when we were doing our college basketball coverage, EFG, effective field goal percentage, is essentially a metric that's used to combine 2-point and 3-point shots, and it's basically your overall effectiveness from the field. And it's probably like the best metric, I think, to use to judge how good of a shooting team that you are, right? Yeah. So that's a one-stop shop that you can use to basically say that Rutgers offensively is not exactly up to par. Whereas Ohio State's a top 60 EFG percentage team, and they're a top 5 adjusted efficiency on offense, according to KenPom. Defensively, that's where Ohio State struggles a little bit. They're 70th in that category. They just gave up 80 to Duke. They gave up 88 to San Diego State earlier this year. So it's kind of a strength on strength. Ohio State's offense against Rutgers' defense. Defense does travel. So that's why I think that Steve Pikiell's crew can be effective in this game. But I think the line movement tells you that Ohio State's probably the right side. As much as I would love to bet Rutgers in this spot, I love taking points with a better defensive team. I don't think I love their offense on the road. They seem to be a team that thrives on Jersey Mike's Arena's energy. And obviously tonight in Columbus, probably not the same vibe. So if I were to bet this game, I likely would lay it with Ohio State, but I would not. I'm personally not betting this game.
What about Iowa State taking on Iowa? The cross-country Iowa battle. You love to see it. Iowa in this spot is laying 4.5 points. And Iowa's one of the best teams when it comes to taking care of the basketball. They're ranked first in the nation in turnover percentage per KenPom on offense. They haven't been scoring at a very high rate, but they are taking care of the rock, and a lot of times that leads to wins. And you look at Iowa State, they're first in the country when it comes to forcing turnovers. This makes for a really interesting matchup, right? Iowa State's going to look to slow down the tempo. They're not great offensively, but they're kind of a team that drags out possessions. And then Iowa, they need to make shots from around the perimeter, because when they played against Duke a couple days ago or whatever it was, they only averaged 0.91 points per possession in that loss. They got good looks, shots just weren't falling. So I know that they're going to be hungry. When you see a team that's really good at forcing turnovers and then a team that's really good at holding onto the rock, which team do you kind of side with?
It's a good question. KenPom Queen this morning. I love it.
KenPom Queen.
Analytics nerd is rocking the analytics numbers this morning, checking all the boxes for me. This is another interesting game because this one's also strength on strength, right? Iowa, this is a very classic Iowa team under Fran McCaffrey. They like to get up and run up and down. They've got Keegan Murray's brother. We all know Keegan Murray's in the NBA right now. His brother Chris Murray is kind of the star of this team. And then one of the McCaffrey offsprings, Patrick, is another, sharpshooter on this Iowa team. Yeah. It seems like one of the McCaffrey, sons kind of peeks up his head into the conversation every year, right? And then Iowa State, on the other hand, I mean, listen, remember, we were talking about Iowa State in the Sweet 16 last year. Very unexpected Sweet 16 run. TJ Olsenberger's done a fantastic job last year in his first year with the Cyclones, coming over from UNLV, and South Dakota State, being able to go to the Sweet 16 in his first year. This is they lost a lot, Iowa State, though. They lost my buddy Brockington from the Penn State transfer, and then their best player, Tyrese Hunter. I think he went to the NBA. I don't know where Tyrese Hunter is actually right now. Maybe he transferred. Oh, he's a Tech. That's right. He transferred to Texas. That's right. Mm-hmm. So they lost their two best players from last year's team. Jaron Holmes, their best player this year, is not like a gifted scorer. They just don't have a lot of gifted scorers on this team. They're, outside of the top 190 in effective field goal percentage. They're 113th in adjusted efficiency on offense. Like, they're a team that likes to slow things down and grind it out, and Iowa's the exact opposite. I don't know who wins this game. I don't know what style wins out here. These are two vastly, vastly different styles. I can tell you the market really does like Iowa State. Open 6. Mm-hmm. Bet all the way down now to 3.5 before we started to see some of the Iowa buyback. So clearly Iowa State at over 4.5, I think, is where the sharp money is coming in. And then once we get down into the 3.5 range, that's where the value's been extracted from this market. I can tell you I do have one college basketball bet tonight, not on any of these.
Ooh, let's hear it.
I have St. Thomas +7 at Montana State. KenPom has this at 5. One of the rating sites that I've been using that's been pretty successful has this 73-72. So a 1-point win for Montana State. And this Bobcats team has been struggling a little bit. And I think St. Thomas, they're not exactly a known commodity. And Montana State's actually coming off a year where they won the Big Sky and had one of the best seasons in recent memory. But they lost a lot. They lost their point guard, and that's why they're struggling a little bit with turnovers, and they lost 2 of their best rebounders. So I think St. Thomas will be game in this spot. So I took 7 with St. Thomas. That's my only college basketball bet of the night.
I like it. College basketball, we'll be getting into that a lot more, especially as the season progresses and NFL kind of slows down a little bit. We got a lot of college basketball, a lot of NBA, a lot of NHL coming up for you in the next few months. Let's Bet It, presented by our friends at Superbook Sports. Pile up the wins and pile up the money with Superbook. Right now, the best betting app from Las Vegas is giving you free money every week you make a bet. Just place a $50 bet each week with Superbook, and they'll give you a $5 bonus up to $50 for betting each week afterwards. If you're in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Nevada, New Jersey, or Tennessee, download the Superbook Sports app or visit superbook.com to get your streak started today. From superbook.com to Pickswise.com, 3-star plays. Hit me with it.
Yeah, we got a couple today. Bobby's got his prop on the site with Kyron Williams. We got Michigan, Minnesota, another college basketball game we didn't talk about tonight. I'm surprised you didn't ask me about your Wolverines. Chad Harstock's chiming in there. Ryan Hodges, Blues, Jets total. And that's it for today. 3 picks on the site for today.
We got them all. Okay, our best bets of the day. And I know we're on opposite sides, but a little bit differently because I got it before the line moved significantly. I have the Raiders laying the 5.5 points in this spot. They have 3 wins in a row right now. They took down the Chargers last week. Devontae Adams had himself a game, 177 yards, 2 touchdowns. And the Rams gave up a late score and lost to the Seahawks. John Wolford under center. We don't know the status of him right now. We don't know if it's going to be Baker Mayfield. And if it is Baker Mayfield, we don't know how that offense is necessarily going to look. This is a guy that's had, 3-4 days to really study the offense and figure it out. I just feel like in a spot like this, I feel really comfortable with the Raiders laying the points on the road. And the Raiders have figured it out the last few weeks. They're averaging 7 yards per play, and they're fourth in points per game scored with 29.7 points per game. The Rams are allowing 25 points per game at home this year. No Matthew Stafford, lots of injuries on the Rams side. This is a tough spot for them. They're in the middle of a 6-game losing skid. And for me, I feel like there's a legit chance for the Raiders to be able to blow them out. Adams against the Rams secondary will be a good matchup. I feel like this could be a good spot for Josh Jacobs. I've looked at Jacobs' numbers over the last couple of weeks. He's really figured it out. Last week, 144 rushing yards. The week before that, 229 rushing yards. The week before that, 109 rushing yards. And with what Bobby Stanley said about how many defensive players on the Rams side that are missing, Aaron Donald being the biggest one, 3 other guys that are playing big minutes, 4 total guys that are playing significant snaps on the Rams defense. I feel like this is a really good spot for the Raiders offense to be able to take advantage. And the Raiders offense has figured it out over the last 3 games, 2 overtime wins and 1 normal game win against the Chargers. But you liked it after this line was bet up a little bit for the Rams, yeah?
Yeah, would you play this? Because 5.5, you're not going to be able to find anymore. Would you still recommend this
I would take
to
it
our
at
audience?
6.5. 7 would be a little
6.5?
too high. Yeah, 6.5. 7 would be a little too high. I feel like this game could be a blowout, to be honest with you.
Okay.
We'll see.
Yeah, once it hit 7, I kind of felt like I had to make a bet on the Rams. I was pretty undecided on it last night, and then when we woke up this morning, I was a little bit less bearish on the Baker Mayfield to LA drama. I actually thought that it might be a positive for him in the long term because of who Sean McVay is and maybe what he can get out of him. We'll see. We'll see. But once this hit 7, I felt like I had, like, it was almost just like instinct. Like once it gets to that key number, I knew that it was going to probably get bought back down. So I jumped pretty fast on the 7. And there are still, as we're recording this show here, around 7:30 Pacific time on a Thursday, I still see a couple of 7s available in the market. One of them a flat 7, which is where I got it at -110. There's a -120 out there at Superbook, but there's also, another shop in town that is hanging a flat 7. So I think that would be the way I would play it from a value perspective. And Cleftier wrote this up for our site this morning. I did have a discussion with him this morning. It's not his most passionate pick. It's not a 3-star. It's probably not even a 2-star, especially when he wrote it up at 6. He said at 7, it's obviously a little bit more valuable, right? But not his highest conviction play. But when you look at Derek Carr's record as a road favorite, not great. 5-12-1 against the spread. And the Raiders have lost 7 straight against the spread as a road favorite, only 2-5 straight up in this game. Their only 2 wins straight up have come by 1 and 3 points. So this isn't a role that they excel in. Of course, the last few weeks, they've been in the road underdog, or last week against the Chargers, slight home favorite role. And that's been a more comfortable role for them. Both of these teams are coming off of really tough divisional games, right? Like Seattle had that game by the throat, and the Rams came back and scored, and then Seattle took the lead late and won it. And the Chargers-Raiders game was back and forth. And this was a Raiders team that I thought did enough to win, and they did. We'll see what Josh Jacobs' status tonight. That is obviously huge. He is officially questionable with a calf injury, and I think I saw hamstring too. Limited in practice this week. Quad and calf. Limited in practice this week, so he did at least get some practice time in. But short week coming off of what Lauren has said, multiple performances of 20, 25 carries. We'll see what his energy level is here, because I think that's going to be a huge part. Derek Carr keeping, that offense balanced. It's going to be a lot of Josh Jacobs, and it's going to be a lot of Devontae Adams. And I'm fascinated to see what that matchup looks like too. With Jalen Ramsey tonight, we'll see how that kind of slots out. Overall, I think the Baker thing is net positive for the Rams. It can't be net negative. They didn't really give up anything to get him other than some money. And I've got my popcorn ready. I honestly think he could be a short-term spark for a team that has some good players. They are the defending Super Bowl champs. I know they're a shell of their former selves, but this is a team that won the Super Bowl 9 months ago. So we'll see exactly what their vibe is tonight. Maybe Baker gives them a spark. I think Baker plays and starts tonight. I think he does.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
Popcorn is ready. So I'll take the Rams at 7. Sorry, I rambled there.
The Rams on national TV 4 straight weeks starting tonight into the rest of the season, which is pretty crazy. We'll see how Baker Mayfield likes the lights, the cameras, the action in LA. Who knows what's going to happen between this Rams-Raiders game, but I'm excited to watch, and the popcorn is ready. That's it for us today. Find us on the Pickswise YouTube channel. Go to Pickswise.com. Follow us on Twitter. Jared Smith and Lauren Jabara. That's it for us. Let's get it. Let's bet.